What if a single text prompt could turn one clip into a whole shot list? New angles, day to night, objects added or removed, VFX, even lighting tweaks. Today, I'm stress testing Runway Aleph on real footage. No hype, what it nails, where it breaks, and how to actually use it in an edit. You will see capabilities and limitations, my test results, and clear pros and cons, so you know exactly when Aleph is worth it and when it isn't. First of all, when you start a new session on Runway website, you will be immediately greeted by Aleph. It's very simple to use it. All you need to do is adding a video clip first, and after that, typing a simple command. A conversational prompt is most of the time more than enough. In this first example, I added this video of a man holding a lamp. So Runway Aleph only allows you to edit 5 seconds of a video. This is maximum output length. The cool thing is they recently added a slider here, so you can easily pick which 5 seconds clip of your uploaded video that you want to edit. You can replace or remove objects with a single prompt. In this example, I'm gonna start from the beginning to the middle. And I wrote simply, man is holding a wolf. And this is what Runway Aleph gave me. It replaced the lamp with a wolf in an almost perfect way. I'm saying almost perfect because you can realize some issues with the paws here, that they look more like lamp feet, but overall, it's very impressive considering I just did it with a simple prompt. For example, here you can see my original clip where I had a photographer taking photos of my model, and I wrote remove the cameraman from video, and Aleph did that perfectly, removing the man from shot completely and only left my model. This is very impressive. Similar example, I had this mirror shot with a cameraman's reflection on the mirror, and I asked Aleph to remove the cameraman, and boom, the cameraman is removed from the shot. Of course, this doesn't always work. If you go back to the example with the man and wolf, you can see that I asked model to remove the wolf from video, and in the end, it removed the animal, or at least upper part of it, but remaining parts were still there. And this is like a minor mistake because, let's face it, everything's beige, gray, whitish here, and I understand why model get confused. I still see this as a minor mistake because most of the time actually Runway Aleph is pretty good with removing objects, but I'm still showing you also examples where it didn't completely do a perfect job, just to keep it transparent. Another cool way to use Aleph is with drone shots. So let's say you have the city shots where it's recorded with the drone, and what you can do is you can change the weather, time, and even the place itself. For example, I wrote in this Istanbul drone shot, make this a nighttime, and Aleph gave me a great nighttime. Of course, if you start focusing on details, you can see some issues with morphings here, but besides that, it's a great shot. Similarly, I had this drone shot of Paris, the Eiffel Tower, and I wrote city is burning, and I added cinematic. And this is something I would highly recommend you, especially if you are working with drone shots, you can add cinematic to your prompt. And here I have a city burning and also completely re-rendered with a cinematic color correction. Here I had this original shot where a woman is riding a bicycle, everything's green, and I asked Aleph to make the weather a snowstorm, and it was like perfectly executed. You can see that it even added some kind of beanie to her, so you can see some really cool details, and everything turned into a snowy landscape, which is very impressive. We can give more examples to playing with the weather. I had this tropical island drone shot, and I wrote make the weather stormy, and I replaced the whole thing with a stormy looking shot. Here, only problem may be that rain kind of looks artificial, but rest of the scenery, waves and outcasts, the weather looks completely fine for me. I had series of edits with this shot where a train is approaching towards the drone camera, and here I quickly added a fog, and it did a very good job. You can see that how fog covers all the trees and train appears over the fog in a perfectly executed way. Remaining shots stays consistent. I added a flood to the same scene, and Aleph gave me all that I asked for. It's truly so much fun to change time, place, and overall landscape while keeping your subject consistent with Aleph. Here I changed the landscape into a desert landscape, and then I changed it to a snowstorm landscape. My characters remain relatively consistent throughout the shot. Then I placed them that they are walking on the Great China Wall. You can see that walking action doesn't really look natural, and they are just making no headway or progress with their walk. And in this shot, I wanted to add some kids running around them, but morphing was unbearable. You can see that some kids multiplied, things got messed up, so not the best job. This video is sponsored by Hera. One of the coolest things about Hera is how fast and effortless it is to create stunning animations using just text prompts. For example, you could type in something like article animation about Elon Musk buying Twitter, and within seconds you would get a polished result. Looks like this. Here I wrote VO3, C Dance, Mid Journey and Clink in a list animation style, and it gave me this motion graphic which I can use in one of my YouTube video intros while doing prompt battles. Here I gives users a lot of control. While the AI handles the heavy lifting, you can still fine-tune animations with features like drag and drop editing, customizable templates and brand kits. You can just pick any element and change it. For example, change its style, change background color. We can make it like this to emphasize something. It's also possible to upload your own brand kit with all of your brand colors. This flexibility is game changer for creators who want both speed and precision. If you want to try Hera, click on the link in the description down below. Here then I took another shot of Istanbul Bosphorus Bridge and I added city gets hit by a big meteorite, and Aleph gave me what I asked for with a simple change of camera angle, and this was something I didn't ask for. And this has something to do with your prompting. Here, for example, in my prompt, I started with river gets hit by a big meteorite, and this is the reason that Aleph changed the camera angle, emphasizing the river view strongly. With Runway Aleph, you can easily change the outfit of a person in your video footage. You can be specific about what you want them to wear, or even upload additional assets to support the desired generation. The cool thing is you can also play with your character's age. Here, for example, I made my character much older, then I made her a child, then I gave her a glowing neon green jacket by this prompt, and then lastly I said she's wearing a red dress and drinking wine and she has no glasses. And I was very impressed by this because Runway Aleph perfectly executed the whole prompt, gave me exactly what I asked for. Then here things got a little bit messy because I told Aleph to remove her and keep only her glasses. If you don't count the initial morphing problem, it gave me what I asked for, but this is a difficult prompt and it struggled with this little bit. You don't have to only update the static subjects, you can also change color of dynamic subjects. Here I had the yellow airplane flying in the air and I asked Aleph to make the plane red, and it did a fantastic job making it red. With, of course, here and there you can realize some slight changes, especially in the tail and in the body part right here. But besides that, it's a fantastic job. I have this original footage of a man juggling balls in the air, and I wrote balls are on fire and replaced them with burning ones. And even though there is no masking or anything, these dynamic objects turn into burning balls. Similar example here where she had this ball rotating in her hand and I quickly replaced it with a fish ball, and the result was simply fantastic. You can also tell Aleph which parts of the footage you want to change in relation to your subject. Here I wanted Aleph to add an electric ball between his hands, and it did quite a good job putting it exactly between his hands. This shows that model has superior understanding of the whole scene and frame, because this wasn't so easy to place that electric ball right there where I wanted. In a similar way, I had this shot where this woman is enjoying her meal in a restaurant. You can see that outside weather is actually nice, everything's green. And I said, make the weather outside snowy, and Aleph gave me exactly what I asked for. Kept everything consistent, her face, her clothing, everything, and just focused on the window view and made it a snowy landscape. This is very impressive. And since I started with this, I decided to edit the shot further. So here we had some struggles because I told model to give her a platinum blonde hair and sunglasses, but you can realize that there were a few issues here. First of all, her face changed dramatically. This almost looks like a different character, so here we lost the consistency a little bit. But then with the red dress, and eating a piece of cake. It actually did a very good job. It just placed the cake next to the plate, not a big deal. And red dress and her face here looked very consistent, so kudos for that. Then I changed the same scene, gave her a leather coat, and placed a parrot on her shoulder. We can still accept it as a good example. And this brings us to some of the other examples where Aleph struggled. I had this footage of a woman trying some dresses in front of mirror, and oh boy, I can tell you that mirror really made things complicated. I wrote make her dresses as a clown, and you can see that morphing got pretty messy here. Similarly, Knight's shiny armor also didn't really work out. At least in the first part of the footage, there were some morphings. After that, it got a little bit better. But main issue here is reflection on the mirror and the object itself doesn't really 100% match. There are some issues visible here. Similarly, 17th century ball dress is also a bit problematic because we see some morphings in the hands, also some morphings with the face on the mirror reflection. This is not a big surprise because mirrors can be a really big challenge for all state-of-the-art AI video and image models. It's just the final boss, really. In this one where I wrote she's blonde and now it's evening time, I was very happy with the subject's changes on the hair color and the time of the day, but again, morphings on the mirror is quite messy, that you can realize. I think one of the coolest things about Runway Aleph is being able to change camera angles, generate different camera angles from existing shot, maintaining visual continuity, color grading, and consistent characters. I will show you some examples of displaying new angles of existing video scenes. Here I have this shot of a man in the office working in a late hour, and then I wrote a close-up shot of the man's face, and Aleph gave me this amazing result. Man looks extremely consistent, and without much effort, with a single sentence, I had the close-up shot. Similar example here, original footage of a couple enjoying some time in a cafe, and then I wrote over-the-shoulder shot of man drinking coffee, facing the woman smiling, and Aleph gave me this second shot. Here I had this original shot of a woman slicing a lime on a cutting board, and I asked a close-up shot, and I specified that I want close-up shot of woman's hands slicing a lime on a cutting board, and Aleph gave me this result. You will realize some problems and slight morphing with the lime itself, so we had some issues there, but overall, Aleph understood what I asked for and gave me exactly that. Here's another prompt of a chef working in his kitchen, and I wrote hidden shot cinematic kitchen scene viewed through the gap between pots, showing a chef working in the kitchen. First one, here's my original chef. I have a hidden camera between pots. The location of the pots and camera looks correct. I think it's a usable shot. Again, a similar example for a hidden shot through vegetables this time, that I want to see her cutting some cucumber on the chopping board, but we see that through the vegetables in front of her, and camera angle changed here with serious problems with the cutting action itself. It definitely looks problematic, but camera angle is here. Another example, a very simple prompt. I just wrote change perspective, nothing so complex, and Aleph gave me a different perspective, a dedicated tracking shot of the blue car, and the car itself looked very consistent. This looks really great. Now I have this seagull flying over the ocean and it's an overcast weather, but what I want was a close-up shot and set it in a sunny day. And now I have the close-up of the same seagull and it's suddenly a nice weather. This is another great prompt. I wrote pull back and angle slightly. Here I would rather say pull back part didn't work so well, but angle definitely changed. You can actually also play with the angle, and this has huge applications for creating AI films and cinematic scenes, because only thing you need to do writing like close-up shot of a woman running and angle slightly, and you have close-up shot of her running, then we can little bit pull back and angle slightly again. Now I have this amazing shot. I can move down my camera to low angle surface level, and unfortunately this just became like a beach running and not running on concrete anymore, but you understood the point. And unfortunately, the same shot, high-angle aerial drone, just didn't work. It completely failed. Another use case, another great example of being able to change the weather, time and place of a location. I started with this original footage of an empty street, and I added night time with people walking, and it added some people and made it a night time. But we don't stop here. I also changed the camera angle. I wrote aerial angle of this original footage, and it gave me the aerial angle with trees and lanterns are visible. It looks quite consistent, and I went even more deeper. I wrote close-up of one of the lanterns, and it's right here, gave me the close-up, and then I put the camera to the low-angle shot of a street near the telephone cabin, and you can see that I'm simply directing the whole thing by just typing prompts, and it's so much fun. Here another cool example of my yellow airplane, and then I wrote show the POV cockpit view of pilot controlling the plane, and immediately it put the camera to the cockpit, that now I'm seeing the whole scene from the eyes of the pilot. Unfortunately, you can realize some morphing in the pilot's hand, but shot itself and how it changed the camera angle is really amazing from my perspective. By the way, if you are enjoying this, please subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on. You can use Runway Aleph's next shot generation. It can help you predict and create the next scenes just from a 5 seconds long simple footage. For example, here I wrote predict and visualize the next 2 shots in the sequence. First, a tight close-up of woman is talking for 2.5 seconds, and then a wider shot of woman takes a cake and throws to the man's face for another 2.5 seconds. Essentially, I divided 5 seconds long Runway Aleph output into 2. So here you can see that the initial close-up shot of her for 2.5 seconds worked really well, but unfortunately cake throwing didn't work. It was quite morphy and it just didn't work, but you can clearly see that it understood the camera angles that I asked for. Very similar example with this shot that I wanted it to predict the next sequence. Again, 2.5 seconds for tight close-up of the diver, and then wider shot of a kraken attacks her for another 2.5 seconds. It delivered what I asked for with problems on the kraken side and maybe slight morphing with my diver's body, but overall it gave me what I asked for. This time I didn't specify how long I want these sequences to happen. I just wrote show me the next 2 scenes, and it gave me this shot of woman walking with the gun in a corridor and kinda opening a door. Sometimes it just gives you like what's the natural next step in the scene. It's quite creative in the sense of what would follow up this footage. I think it did a good job. In a similar way, I just took this shot where she's shooting with the gun 2 times, and then I wrote create an establishing shot, and it gave me this where I can see a little bit more of the room that she's in, and 2 gun shots are also here, so sequence is consistent within itself. If you have a close-up shot, you can suddenly change the perspective and show the rest of the room with this prompt. You can also just add things to the next sequence. Here I added armed SWAT officers are rushing in the background. They look a little bit unrealistic, but you can clearly see that model is able to understand what I asked for. It is possible to use a reference image with Runway Aleph. I actually added a product photo of a Quadriga, the premium water. This is not a real brand. And I added this video of a rock platform on it, and I simply wrote add the attached product on top of the rock platform. A problem you will see here, I significantly lost the consistency of my product. Brand is somehow here, but rest of the bottle definitely morphed and changed shape. And that's why if you want to use Runway Aleph for product photography or product ads, I would not recommend it, but it actually does a pretty good job with piece of garments and clothing. You can upload a piece of garment or clothing, and then Aleph would be able to perfectly make your model wear it. That can be a good use case. You can use Runway Aleph for relighting. You can simply change the direction of light, and it's amazing. I started with this footage of this man, and I wrote light is coming from the front, his face is well lit. And then immediately we see his face, the light direction changed. In this scene, the cinematic light is coming from her right side, and I wrote change the light to the other part of her face. You will realize that it did a good job with changing the light to the other part of her face, but Slight issue is it changed the eye color of my subject, and this is very unfortunate because it could have been very good shot. If my subject's eye color would stay also consistent, it would be perfect. In this example, I had my female character and she's shooting, and the scene itself looks very much like a stock video. It's well lit, and this is not something we want. I changed the camera angle to over the shoulder shot, and then I added cinematic lighting, and you will realize that colors immediately change to something a little bit more darker and a little bit more cinematic, which is very cool. Of course, you don't have to do everything darker and cinematic. If you prefer to make your shot more vibrant and colorful, you can also do that. After uploading this original shot, you can see that Runway Aleph actually made it more colorful and more saturated. This is something you can also do. Final thoughts about Runway Aleph. Some outputs look janky, while others feel stunningly realistic. And the difference often comes down to your source footage and how much you push the prompt. Similar to other AI video tools, still a little bit hit or miss. Textures sometimes feel like a cutscene from 2010 video game, and 5 seconds maximum length for outputs is a little bit limiting, but I'm sure this is gonna be improved by time. Quality of outputs are not exactly blockbuster ready most of the time, but that's okay because we all know from this point on, this technology will get better and better. I think this model is still impressive. Just using prompts, I was able to change scenes, light, camera angles, removed elements from my video, add elements to my video, change outfits of my characters, and I think this is really a revolution. I can totally see some VFX experts would roll their eyes. They may say it's not good enough, but here's the thing, it doesn't need to be. This is not for everyone. If you are a VFX professional, it's great. You have access to great tools, you have skills. Runway Aleph is about access. So many people have no idea about post-production workflows. But with this tech, they have at least a chance to try some fun and cool stuff. Think about small studios or indie filmmakers. Now think about costs of traditional VFX, and then you will realize that Runway Aleph has a promising value proposition, especially for smaller creators. It is not perfect, but it's promising. Hopefully this video was truly helpful for you. Don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe for more in-depth tutorials. If you want to learn more about future of AI storytelling, click here.